You are listening to Words Off the Street, a discussion with police, fire, and EMS writers. We bring you their take on your world. Stay tuned for your host, BJ Schneider.
You are listening to episode 6.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Words Off the Street. In just a short while, I'll be interviewing O'Neil Noux, a longtime detective here in Louisiana and an author with a stable of over 25 novels. Remember, you can find the show notes with all the links at wordsoffthestreet.com. And please contact us with questions, ideas, or thoughts on the show. You can do that at streetwordspodcast@gmail.com. But first, let's knock out some advertising. Today's show is brought to you by E006 Books, Training and Public Speaking. E006 Books is responsible for my short story collection, Welcome to New Orleans, How Many Shots Did You Hear? And Volume 2, Welcome to New Orleans, The Life You Save May Take Your Own. These collections are true stories from my years as a cop and a medic in the Big Easy. E006 is also the publisher of my adventure fiction, A Salty Life and a Trader's Death. This is a tale of a modern-day smuggler and pirate caught in the middle of a fight for gold on the high seas. These books can be found on my website at e006books.net, as well as all your favorite ebook outlets. E006 Book also does trainings in areas such as tactical medicine, safety, and arranges for public speaking at your function. So go to www.e006books, that's XIPHOS books.net, sign up for our newsletter, or visit the Facebook page and follow and get the latest news and releases. All right, everybody, I just wanted to tell you I'm going to skip over new news and noteworthy this week because we have a great long interview with a lifelong Louisiana native, a prolific author, and a former law enforcement colleague of mine back in St. Bernard Parish, O'Neil Noux. O'Neil's works include 8 Dino Lastanza novels, numerous novels in both the Bo and K series, at least 8 other novels that I could count, that's over 25 in total, a screenplay, several non-fictions, including a writing guide, and a list of short stories that don't even begin to count. His awards include a Seamus Award, Derringer Awards, and the Police Book of the Year for 2011. Listen in as I have an extremely interesting interview. If it sounds like I'm overwhelmed and a bit jealous all at the same time, you'd be right. Enjoy. Welcome, O'Neil. How are you doing today? Thanks for coming on to Words Off the Street.
I'm doing fine. Nice to hear from you.
Excellent. I've been waiting a while to sit down with you and talk to you and pick your brain. You by far have the broadest range of books out there than most of the guests that we've interviewed so far on this show. Not to mention, you've been in law enforcement for quite a few years. Can you take a minute and tell us about your public service career and how that evolved into writing?
I always knew I'd be a writer. When I was in high school, I attempted to write short stories that were all bad. I didn't know at the time, but they were bad. I went into law enforcement, and I started in 1968 as a police cadet in Jefferson Parish, and I stayed in law enforcement until I got drafted into the Army during the Vietnam War. I returned to law enforcement after my service. I did not go to Vietnam. Some people have asked me that. I was in country here in the U.S. during the war. But I went back to law enforcement and remained there and been in and out of law enforcement until today, and I'm still a cop today. I'm back being a detective, but I'll be retiring soon.
Congratulations on the pending retirement.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. It's been a while, but it's time to move on from law enforcement. It's a young man's game, especially being a detective. You really need to be on your toes at all times. I started writing stuff that I knew after I became a police officer. I followed Hemingway's advice, write what you know, and started writing pretty much anecdotes from my law enforcement career. Tried to make a novel out of it, didn't work. Then I became a homicide detective in Jefferson Parish. And that's when I discovered what I should write, which is crime fiction, primarily police procedural crime fiction. And that's what I started. My first novel was called Grim Reaper, came out in 1988. And if you read it, and I know you said you've read it, it's a little different. And it's hyper-realistic, it's got realistic language, and strong on setting. And it received some critical praise and sold well. And I continued the series for a while until the publisher kind of didn't like it, wasn't selling well for them. And then I continued, and I've been writing ever since. I haven't slowed down, haven't stopped. I just write all the time.
Well, I think you see a lot of that hyper-realistic style nowadays here in 2016, 2017. But when you put that book out in 1988, I really think that was on the cusp of the way things were going with writing. You were writing like things were being seen, and that really wasn't natural for what you were getting out of a lot of the novels at the time. I think you really did turn the procedural police fiction in a new direction.
Well, thank you. I followed Joseph Wambaugh's lead. He was the first one of us to really hit it big. But he still did Hollywood stuff because he was writing in Hollywood. He wrote in L.A. But he was an inspiration, and I just took off from there and just did it my way. I've really done it my way all the way through my career.
Well, and it seems to have worked out well for you, or at least as you continue to move forward. You've had success. We all judge success a little differently, but I think it's become a big issue with seeing your work progress and move forward. One of the questions I always ask, especially with someone having such a career that has stretched as many years as yours had, both in the law enforcement side, the public safety side, and in the writing side. So as your experience and your knowledge on the job changed, I mean, obviously as a rookie homicide detective, you knew certain things, but you gained so many skills and knowledge bases, and you get more jaded sometimes, you get more insights. How did that affect your writing over the years? Did that change how you put things in perspective as you moved forward?
I don't think my writing is that closely linked to the law enforcement. In other words, I've written beyond just police procedures. I write standard mysteries, I write private eye novels, I write historical fiction. My writing career has progressed separately from my law enforcement career because I early on decided and determined that I was a writer first. And everything else I did in support of my writing. And as an artist, I honed my craft and carefully progressed, and I think got better, and I write leaner now than I did before, and I write the way Elmore Leonard teaches us to write, to leave out the parts people skip over. My law enforcement career has been very important because it gives me the insights into people. And that's what we need. You know, people that watch television think that all these crimes are solved by all this evidence that people get. And I know better because the murders that I solve, the murders that my partners and I solve, we solve by getting information from people. And the evidence was circumstantial. So a lot of people forget that or don't understand that. And they don't really know law enforcement. You can just see when you're reading their books. Usually guys like Paul Bishop, who's a LAPD retired officer, excuse me, his stuff, you know he was a cop. You can just tell. You can just listen to the voice. And he's been there.
No doubt. It's kind of like you always hear people joke about movies. Cops don't watch movies about cops because all they're going to do is pick it apart. Military people don't watch military movies because all they're going to do is take it apart for the lack of accuracy or the lack of the proper tone as they move forward. And I think it shows through your work when you read it that you know what you're talking about. And more so than that, just what you said, that you're looking at the insights on people, you're following those steps, and you're not making that Hollywood leap on something just because you needed a MacGuffin at that particular point to wrap things up.
And you're correct. Actually, television is worse than movies. I will not watch a television cop show. Absolutely not. I watched the first episode of CSI the very first night it came out with William Peterson. And in that episode, he stated, we don't need detectives. We're going to solve all this. When the crime lab says they don't need detectives to solve murders, I'm out of it. That's it. Never went back.
So, what are you currently working on now? You have any new projects in the works?
as I'm always writing. When I finish one novel, I start another one. Sometimes I'll do some short stories in between. I'm writing the stanza novel number 10. There are 8 published as of today. Number 9 will be coming out next year. And then it's finished. It's just going through the editing and through drafts. My books go through extensive editing and drafts by me and the other people in our co-op help proofread and stuff. But I'm writing number 10 right now. The book beyond that.
That's just a horrible tease. I just want to let you know right now, since I'm already through the 8, I'll be biting at the bit for 9 and 10. So
yes. Oh, good. It's a little different. A lot of the action does not take place in New Orleans. What I decided to do with Lastanza is move him progressively from being a homicide detective into being a private investigator, private eye, which is what I did. And by the time you get to book 7, which is called The Blue Nude, he becomes a private eye. And then the book after that, The Long Cold, he's a private eye. And he's still a private investigator. So he is not a homicide detective anymore. That role has been picked up by my other character, John Raven Bowe, with his books. He's still a homicide detective. But Lastanza is a private investigator, so it's about time he did some work away from the city. Of course, it still begins in the city and ends in the city, but there's some extensive work in the Caribbean in that book.
So did you move him into that role? I mean, you see a lot of authors who have made their characters and stepped back and forth in different roles. Connolly is a perfect example. Harry Bosch, in real time, has been a homicide detective for almost 40 years on paper. And that's been a pretty long that's probably the longest progression that I can think of. Did you think that moving him into that private investigator position kind of broadened what you could do with him, since you felt, I don't know, did you feel that you had him procedurally boxed in as a homicide detective?
I believe characters in a series need to progress. They need to move forward. Their lives need to move forward. I don't want to write the same book over and over again, and I haven't. None of my books are repeats of, Grim Reaper is one guy who's technically a serial killer. I've never written about a serial killer since. I don't write about that. The cases are different, the characters different, and I thought it was time for Lastanza, being married to Lisette, a very wealthy woman, to move out of homicide, to move into private work, which gives him the liberty and the ability to do stuff that other private eyes don't do or can't do, because he doesn't have to worry about money. He's married to a wealthy woman. He just does the cases he wants and be as mean and nasty as he wants to be, because what they're going to do? They're going to try to sue him. He's got lawyers that are the most expensive lawyers in the world.
He's got money to
does what he wants to do. That's right, and he's a loose cannon, and he does pretty much what he wants to do. And it's fun. He's given me the liberty to have a character just go where he wants to go and do what he wants to do. So he's a fun character to write. He's not as bitter as he was at the beginning. In Grim Reaper, he was so down and so harsh, but he's progressed. But still, it's there. He's still the leopard inside.
Yeah, I think it shows great growth when you can see a character change like that. Your avid readers can see those small changes in a character that allows them to feel like they're part of this ongoing growth process. I think that's amazing. It makes it, for me, the reader, it makes it a wonderful thing.
Good. I'm glad you like it.
So with all your years on the street, and you have so much time teaching, and we've talked about writers who are both professional writers who have never done time in the police realm or the public safety realm, and then we're talking about writers who have done both. Have you ever taken, obviously we all take our personal experiences, the tidbits that we see every day, but has there been any scene or incident and all that you just said, oh, I've got to mold this or meld this into a scene that I'm writing?
Yes. My book, Crescent City Kills, which I believe is the 4th book in the Lastanza series, that book is based on a real case. In fact, the book before that, Blue Orleans, was also based on a real case. That one is loosely based, whereas Crescent City Kills is not loosely based at all. It's very closely based on a real case. The only differences were the fact that the bodies were found in Jefferson Parish and I handled the case and with my partners, and took us 13 months to solve the murders. And I condensed it with Lustanza and put the murders in New Orleans. And that one's pretty much the way we worked it, and pretty much ended the way we did, right down the line. It was not that difficult to write because I had worked that case so intently. But what I wanted to put in there is the effect of the violence on the officers as well as the victims. Well, you're having to go through. It was a double murder of two young black prostitutes who were drug dealers that nobody gave a damn about, not even their families. In fact, one family told me and told Lustanza they didn't give a damn about the young woman. She was nothing but a tramp. They gave up on her years ago. The girl was only 18. And the other one told me that Jesus was going to solve the murder. And I told him, when he does, give me a call. And we wound up solving the murders and, getting the bad guy.
That's pretty amazing that you were able to incorporate that and get to delve into that deep emotional side that as officers you don't always get to share. You don't, it's kind of hard to get the general public to understand that. And in a novel like this, you get the opportunity to put it all out there on the line.
Yeah, I tried. That's all you can do is try.
Well, let me ask you about some of your books that I haven't had an opportunity to read, but I promise I will be getting to them in 2017, and that's your historical fiction. Tell me where you are with that, where that came from. It's an area that I'm interested in. I know some of our listeners are interested in, and I kind of wanted to get a little background on that from you.
Well, my degree from college was in European history. I'm a history major. I loved it. Always have. And I always wanted to write historical fiction, and I did a little bit with some historical mysteries. But toward around 2009 or 10, I realized that the 200th, the bicentennial anniversary of the Battle of New Orleans was approaching in 2015. And I looked around, and there was no epic novel about the battle. There was small novels about Jean Lafitte and about Andrew Jackson, but nobody wrote a big epic like Gone with the Wind about the Battle of New Orleans. So I decided I would do it. And I worked on it for over 2 years. Every day, every night, I'd work, get back to writing, spend weekends doing it. I accumulated 70,000 words of notes about the battle before I started writing it. And the book is 320,000 words long, which is 4 times larger than most novels. It's an epic.
Yeah, that's almost 4 pulp novels right there.
It's probably the best thing I've ever written. The characters took over the book from me. They pretty much ran with it because it's told from the American point of view, the British point of view, and the Creole point of view, which is the native New Orleanians point of view. And it was a fascinating thing, and I did it, and I really loved it and put it out. And then I decided to do a couple more. I did another one about the U.S. Navy during the Age of Sail, and that was called USS Relentless. And then I just released one last year set in World War II. It's called Death Angels. And it's about a squad of OSS assassins working in France, killing Germans and French collaborators. That was fascinating studying about World War II. So I'm sure I'll do more historical fiction because I really enjoy history and I enjoy writing historical fiction.
Well, with that, especially when you talk about something going all the way back to the Battle of New Orleans, go ahead.
Yes, and added to that, I wanted to add that my novel, The French Detective, is set in 1900 New Orleans. So it is an historical mystery. And that one was fascinating to write because New Orleans in 1900 was very different from New Orleans in 1814 and 15, and of course very different from New Orleans today. So you have to do a lot of research, and of course I love New Orleans. I'm a New Orleanian, and it was fascinating to go back there and relive those times.
Well, and you went right where I was going to ask the next question, which is how much research did you have to put in? I mean, granted, it's a fiction work, but when you're talking about a detective novel and knowing the city and the outlying areas, and we're talking about in 18, 14, and 15, your research had to be, you said how many words you had, but you had to hit every library in the region going after information.
Well, I read 42 books and went to over 200 websites and just checking and rechecking the facts. Just to begin with, the street names in New Orleans were different in 1814 and 1815. Very few streets had the same names. They were called differently. And so you have to get it right, and you have to get the streets going the right way. Now, Wall Street was Wall Street, but it wasn't. It was called Rue Royale, obviously. And like I didn't know. Here it is. The book starts in 1814. New Orleans is part of the state of Louisiana, which became a state in 1812. It had been ruled by the French and the Spanish, but French was the language. It was the accepted language in the city until the Americans made everybody learn English. Even during Spanish rule, everyone spoke French. It's fascinating. It really was.
Which adds its own particular flair to it.
Yes, it does. It really did. And of course, there are a lot of little incidents in the book that really happened from history. And then, of course, the beauty of writing a novel is you can make up stuff.
Well, I always think it's beautiful when you read someone's work or you do the writing yourself, when you can take those larger points in history and weave in the smaller fictitious workings that are going on in your mind with these larger true life events that are happening. That, to me, that's what makes historical fiction so wonderful.
Well, you from St. Bernard, you need to read, I think, Battle Kiss, because it's set, a lot of the action set in St. Bernard. One of the main characters is Lucia Rodriguez, and of course the battle was fought at the Rodriguez Canal. It was a lot of fun creating this stuff. It really was. And the main characters are fictional, but all the historical characters are there. Jackson, Pakenham, Jean Lafitte, they're all in the book.
I'll be getting on to that shortly. I have a couple of others that are sitting in the wings that I have to finish up, but I will be moving on to those before January is out. I'm looking at a few things here. I've got several of your works in front of me.
Battle Kiss.
I most certainly will. It'll be first on the list, like you said, especially with where I grew up and my background. And I think that's kind of the beautiful thing, how someone like me and anybody who's local gravitates to your work. And you tell me if you've heard the same things. I think there's two things about your writing. I was a policeman for a long time. I've also been a paramedic a very long time. So I am obviously drawn to works that resonate with me in the sense of the police work that seems real, that seems legit, and I like the flow of the characters, obviously, and all that. But then the second portion is that the city of New Orleans, in a lot of the books, are a character in and of themselves, and that's what's so wonderful to me. Being a New Orleanian, or anyone who loves New Orleans, they get that feel of that extra character that weaves through the book. And you couldn't have written, in my opinion, you couldn't have taken Dino Lastanza and stuck him in another city and gotten the same flair out of him that you did in New Orleans.
I think you're right. Setting is extremely important in fiction. It's its own character, and it's good to visit it. I like to visit places in the city that most people don't, like Saraparoo Street and all these odd streets and stuff, and areas like that. And it's fun, and I keep doing that. And the city is of course incredibly interesting. And it's as unique as any other city, and a lot of writers have found that. But some writers get it right, some writers don't. I just enjoy doing it.
And I think you definitely get it right. There's no doubt in my opinion about that. Let me move on and ask you a couple of questions about your process.
Thank you.
Your writing process in itself. So when it comes to setting up, now I know you're working full-time now, you're getting ready to retire again. Do you have a special time you write? How do you structure your writing as far as, do you say, I'm going to put in X amount of time a day, or I put this time aside to do it, or is it a binge thing? How do you go about putting those words to the page?
It's a discipline. I write every day. Now, during the work week, I work the day shift right now. So I go to work. When I come home, I have dinner with my wife, and then I write. That's it. I might watch a little bit of television with her, usually miniseries like Downton Abbey or Game of Thrones or stuff like that. Not a lot, but I write every night. Every night I write. And if you write a little every night, you get a lot done. And then, of course, on weekends, I get up early in the morning on Saturday and I write. And then we do things we have to do, and then I go back and write. Usually I write 3 times a day on a Saturday. Sunday is the same thing. I write on holidays, like Christmas. I will write. Start every morning I get up, write as much as I can. Then I'll do whatever I have to do in my life other than writing, and then I go back and write. And if you do that year after year after, you can write a lot of words. Truly, you really can. Now, since I'm getting ready to retire, I am confident that I will be writing more and writing every day.
I believe that completely. You said it very well, that putting that discipline on it, I've found that when I put myself in a discipline mode to make sure that I write, even if I'm not writing the best, I'm writing. I'm moving those characters forward, or I'm researching, I'm putting information down, I'm building that story, I'm moving that snowball down that hill and watching it grow one way or the other with it. I feel that when I step away, I've had incidences where I'd step away for a week and come back, and I feel like I have to reread all of my own work just to know where I am to try to make the character who he really is without having lost something.
Well, that's a good description, rolling a snowball down the hill. Yes.
I'm going to lean on your teaching background a little bit. I could ask you 20 or 30 great questions about your process and all this, but I'm going to cheat. I'm going to say that with all the time you've done writing creative, short story, mystery, and science fiction writing, and I just finished your book, A Short Guide to Writing and Selling Fiction, can you give us some tips for just starting out, those in public safety who are taking some of their experiences and their background and they're moving into writing for the first time? What are some of the tips you can give them as burgeoning writers?
Well, taking a course like mine helps. It's a small course. If you're going to take a course from someone about writing, take it from a professional writer. Don't take it from a professor who's never written a novel in their life or short stories of any success. Believe me, I was in the creative writing program at a university in Louisiana. I was a student, and it was incredibly bad. It really was, because they do not write for success. They write for artistry, and it's okay to write for artistry, but it's going to be tough for you to be successful. And when I mean successful is get your book published and read. So you need to probably start there. Try to find someone who knows what they're doing. Get a couple of books on it. Look into it. Read a lot. Read the kind of fiction you want to write. You're not going to copy anything. Believe me, don't copy anything. But read and see how it's done. See what they do. And then you're going to have to go through what Ray Bradbury says, 100,000 bad words. We all have it in us. You have to get through it, because quantity will make for quality eventually. You get it right. My suggestion is to write one story as best you can. Start with a short story. Write it as best you can. Rewrite it, write it, rewrite it until you think it's polished. Then send it off to wherever you want to try to get it published and move on. And then eventually you can go into a novel. But you need to discover your voice. And that's a tough thing to discover. It really is, because you don't want to sound like anyone else. You don't really want to write like anyone else. You want to be you. So find your voice and go with it. Now, people are going to criticize you. You're going to have people who know more about things than you and tell you, if someone tells you your writing is unclear, you may want to look at it again. But if they're just telling you stuff like, you should write it this way, you should write it that way, I don't like this, or I don't like that, you got too much sex in your book, you haven't, just ignore them. You don't think Picasso listened to people who told him anything about his paintings. And that's what we are. We're artists. And
There's a difference
what I want to do the way I want to do it.
And personal opinion.
Right. And you gotta watch the constructive criticism too, because what they want you to do is to write like everybody else. And I don't see what the point of that is. Now, if you want to do that just to get published, okay, that's good. But then go beyond that. Become you. That's one of the things that I'm most proud of my writing, especially the police procedurals and the mysteries and the private eye stuff, is people know it's me. I can't fake it. That's my writing. And that's what I want it to be. It's the way I do it. And if someone doesn't like it, don't read my stuff. I've been alive this long. I'll still live.
Well, and it's as much as cultivating your audience, I think, as well. There are going to be people who don't like your writing. But then again, there's people who don't like everybody's writing. And it's about finding those people who like what you write and building those followers around it. You definitely know more than me in this area, but I see that there are a lot of people who are going to read it, like you said, oh, there's too much sex, or there's too much violence, or I didn't like this. And then my suggestion is, then don't read the next book in the series, or don't read any of my other works, because they're going to have the same sort of thing in them. Maybe you should move on to a different author.
Yeah, I agree. Yes. And if you like the stuff, buy other stuff. And what people can do to really help writers like me and other indie writers, independent writers, is buy our books as Christmas presents. You're going to spend $20, $30 on someone in the family. My books cost usually $11.95, the paperbacks, trade paperbacks. The biggest ones cost maybe $13, $14. I don't have any. The only book that's around $20 is Battle Kiss, because it's so large, because it takes that much to print it. Buy books from local writers and give them to people. I mean, I think it's much better for me to give my nephew or my cousin a book rather than some piece of something that's going to last a short while. Just give them a book. Make them think. Make them sit down and read. Reading is important. Not just my books, a lot of other writers.
Broaden their horizons in reading and in the world around them.
That's right.
Great way to look at it.
I give books as presents.
I give my books as presents, but I can't really consider that as presents. So
I'll give other writers books too. I'll buy books that other writers have written that I admire and give them as presents to people. To read a book, man. Just go out and read a book.
A couple of writers who have helped me out in both the writing world and the podcasting world. They are in both of the areas. I just gave some of their books away for Christmas because I don't write in the same genres they do usually, and things like a lot of this vampire werewolfy stuff is not my thing, but the nieces sure do like it, and I wanted to make sure I could share somebody else's work who I appreciated with them, and it would be something that they would like.
I think it's a good idea.
So here, let me ask you this. When we talk about working with other writers, and we are talking about growing and finding our voice, what's the most important thing that you can think of? Websites, groups, organizations, magazines, for new writers to subscribe to look for, to be a part of?
I can't answer that. I don't know why. There's no local group around our area, writing groups. I'm sure there are some, but I'm not aware of them. I used to read The Writer and Writer's Digest, but I don't anymore. I'm in a different place in my career now, so I don't know what a new writer, where they should go. If they can befriend a successful writer and get to know them. I was fortunate. I had professional writers befriend me, and I befriended them. Guys like George Alec Effinger and Harlan Ellison, and they really helped me. So I'm not sure what I could tell someone on that. I wish I could point them to a group.
But that is a big thing. Definitely networking, you feel, and learning other people in the trade is a big step that they should be taking to kind of get that behind-the-scenes look into the business.
Yes, that would help. It helped me.
All right, completely straight-up fun question for you. Are you an e-book guy or a paper guy?
I'm both. I'm ambidextrous. I love them both. I have a Kindle. I read on Kindles all the time because they're portable, and it's easy to store a lot of books when you go on a trip or anything. But I also like paperbacks or hardbacks. I like books as well. So I go either way. All of my books are published as ebooks and as trade paperbacks. And I've got 8 of them now that are audiobooks. So I like all formats. I certainly don't say I only like one by any stretch. If someone tells me, yeah, I bought your book, but I only bought the Kindle, I say, that's great. You bought the book. You don't have to buy the paperback. It's there if you want it. The Kindle is there as well. I like Kindle. I think it's the future. And I think that people are going to keep reading ebooks. I think it's never going to go away. It's only going to get bigger because people buy a lot of books. The problem with ebooks is there's so many books out there that it's hard to find a good book.
Well, we share a lot of similar opinions with that I am definitely, using your words, I'm ambidextrous when it comes to reading. I love my Kindle. I love being able to have a dozen books at my fingertips because, as you said, reading is such a big part of writing. I'm usually reading at least one fiction and several nonfiction books, reference style books at the same time as I'm trying to broaden my knowledge in different areas. The one thing that I find that I love paper so much for is some books don't translate as well as ebooks as they do in paper. I find anything with a lot of pictures or maps or something like that, and any of these great old books. If you have these old books about New Orleans and as we call them, coffee table books down here, something about being able to thumb through those pages gives you that sensory difference that is so cool and interesting. So I leap back and forth from one world to the other with that as well.
Yes.
So one of the questions I also like to ask everybody is, I mean, so much of what you write when you read it, you do such a great job of being visually descriptive. I find that when I read your works, I can see in my mind's eye the story unfolding in front of me. It's as if I'm reading and the movie is playing itself out in my head. That is a talent that is such a wonderful gift to be able to have. With that said, are you a movie fan? Are you big into movies? Do you have a favorite film and why?
Yes. All of my books are written in scenes. If they start in a scene, they'll end in a scene. Now, there might be other things inside, like flashbacks and thought-conscious stuff, but I write visually. I write for the movies. I anticipate every one of my books to be filmed, although none has. I had a short story filmed, but I write visually because I like scenes. I love movies. Lately, there aren't very many good movies. It's been a while since I've seen a really good movie. I think the Revenant was a pretty good movie. There are good movies, of course. Schindler's List, stuff like that. Really great movies. But my favorite movies, beyond all movies, are The Godfather Part 1 and The Godfather Part 2. Those are my favorite movies of all time. Because they're about family, about gangsters, yes, but about family. It is an American classic story. I really enjoy it.
I love hearing you say that because so many people don't get that The Godfather is a family film, not a gangster film. There's a big, big difference. It's about a family losing part of themselves and losing themselves in time. The vivid background of the mob is just an overlay for them to be able to tell that amazing story with it. One of my favorites is actually a great cut if you ever get a chance. Someone took 1 and 2 and they cut it completely up and re-edited it, and they made one long time synced movie, starting obviously with the scenes from 2 with De Niro, and played it all the way through in chronological order. Pretty amazing to see it that way.
Yes, I've seen it. I've seen it that way.
And a whole lot less Fredo.
They're good. They're good movies all the way around. It's just well done. But there are a lot of movies I like. I mean, I love westerns. I love Silverado. Tombstone, probably one of my all-time favorite westerns. I like movies about spies. I love the Ipcris File. What a wonderful movie that is with Michael Caine. I like the Spy Who Came In From the Cold. I love a good spy movie. I love a good mystery movie, The Maltese Falcon. I love a good love story. I mean, I like Titanic. I was a big fan of the movie. It's a good movie. I really was fascinated about how many people got angry at Cameron for doing it and teasing him that, I said that he made, a sappy love story. I said, hey, pal, everybody knew the story of Titanic. He's the one that wrote the best love story about it. Give him credit.
It wasn't like there was going to be a mystery at the end and the iceberg was going to miss. It was an amazing weaving of that piece of history into a great fictional love story.
It is. It's a good movie. Schindler's List is a great movie.
They're great stories. And I think that's the key from what I'm hearing that you say, that great stories. They're good movies, and there's fun movies. A lot of these great action flicks and things like that, they're fun to pass the time. But things that resonate with you and stick with you are those that are the great stories. And obviously, someone with your background in writing, you definitely key in on those wonderful stories.
Yeah, I think so. I know my wife and I will go to movies, and I'll tell her, I said, I'm beginning to judge movies by the lack of explosions. The fewer explosions, the better the movie.
I can't disagree with that. I think sometimes the explosions are put in there to make up for poor writing.
Well, I think so. Like one of the movies we saw that came out last year, I believe, is the movie called Brooklyn, about an Irish immigrant girl who falls in love with an American and gets tied up with going back to Ireland and all. And it's, there's no explosions in it. It's a simple story told well acted, well directed. That was a pretty darn good movie. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, sometimes it's those flowers in the grass that are hard to find. There's so many good things out there, but they get blocked off. It's the same thing with books. I think we talked about ebooks and paper books. I mean, one of the biggest things I think about ebooks nowadays is it makes it easier, I think, to find those books in those genres and in those niches that you really like, where you walk into a bookstore or a library and it can easily vanish in the weeds, some of these great books that you may never come across without having word of mouth or something like that. It's always a good way to find new and wonderful things.
I agree.
So I looked up here at the time and realized how long we've been talking. Yes. We've been having a great long conversation here. I think we're going to start to wrap this up a little bit. So I'm going to give you a minute. What could you share with those of us who are just starting our writing career, who are either still working in public safety or have roots in public safety? You've given us some great tidbits about writing every day and writing what you know and some of these things that the greats have shared with us. Anything else you'd like to share with us?
Oh, yes. When I became a road deputy, a patrol officer with Jefferson Parish, and I knew I was going to be a writer. I know I was writing and trying. I started writing down what happened, what I felt in certain cases. Between working on calls, I would write stuff down. And how my partners reacted, how the public reacted, and the different things I saw and felt. And I used that later. So even if you're not finishing short stories or novels, you can accumulate data and insights as you begin your career, and they can come in later. I know when I became a homicide detective, there were so many things that's so radical from being a patrolman, autopsies and stuff like that you don't see, that I would write notes about it, and I would say, I remember that, and later on you put those in your book, because those are the unique things you observed and you felt, and other people haven't. And put it in there and see how it goes. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But the thing is you have to think like a writer and be a writer. If you're going to become a writer, you just tell yourself, I am a writer. And I was telling people that for years. I'm a writer. And my father would tease me. Yeah, what book did you ever get published? What book, all that stuff and all. But guess what? Grim Reaper came out, and they all took a step back and said, hey, he did it. I said, nah, that's just the beginning. And that's what you do. You just believe in yourself if you want to be a successful. And when I say successful writer, is a writer who gets the books finished and out there. I don't judge by monetary, how much money you make, although in America that's the only important thing people think about. But I've received some good critique, and I've received some awards from my peers, and those make me proud, because actually, when I've won those awards, the people who awarded me, I never knew any of them. I never met any of them. wasn't like I was their buddy and they gave me an award. I earned them. At least my writing earned them. And I'm proud of that. And I continue to write and continue to do it. I hope I'll get better every day.
Well, thank you so much for such great advice for those of us just starting out our career. And thank you for so many great books that you have out there. I encourage everybody who listens to take the time to go grab one of O'Neill's books, pick one at random and start with it, pick one of the series in the beginning and work your way through it, and sit back and enjoy. Enjoy it as a great novel, and enjoy it as a great learning platform for somebody who has put in the time and put in the mileage to make these books something amazing. So, O'Neill, how can readers discover more about you? Where can they find you and your work?
I have a website that you can discover. It has my biography and it has all my books listed. And that's O'NeillDenoux.net, which is www, my name spelled just the ONEILDENOUX.net. The best way is to go there, or you can go to Amazon.com. All of my books are available through Amazon. Some of my ebooks are available through Smashwords. But you're not going to go in a bookstore and find my stuff because bookstores don't carry indie writers because they can't get their money back to send it in after 90 days. So they rarely carry us. So go to Amazon.com, put my name in, search for it, and just look through what's available.
Excellent. And just so everybody knows that there will be a link in the show notes to both O'Neill Denoux's webpage and to his Amazon author page where all of his books are listed. Thank you once again for coming on. I couldn't have asked for, we've been going now for almost an hour. We could probably do another hour just with some of the stuff that I didn't get to touch on. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for the invitation. Glad to be here.
Wow, really had a great time interviewing O'Neill. He really did pass on some great information for a lot of new writers. And he also turned me on to some of his books that I didn't even know were out there. Make sure you go to the show notes and click on his link so that you can take a look at his other works. Make sure you subscribe to the show either on iTunes, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast medium. Also, go to the website and sign up for our newsletter. That way you'll get the latest information on the shows that are coming out and all the things that are happening here at Words Off the Street. Thank all of you for listening. I'm sitting here with my son, Blade. Say hi, Blade.
Hi!
Remember, you can always find the show at wordsoffthestreet.com. You can find us at Facebook at Words Off the Street. And you can always send us an email at streetwordspodcast@gmail.com.
Bye! See you next time!
You heard him. See you next time, folks.